I love meetups and I love conferences. These are amazing places where you can meet like-minded people and share ideas and network. So I'm going to start off with a pop quiz. I'm going to show you a picture that I took at a conference, and I want you guys to tell me what you guys see in that picture. All right? So what do you guys see in this picture? Okay, registration right there. Cool. What else? People. Yes. Now I'm going to tell you something more that I see in this picture. What I see behind those desks is a couple of conference organizers who have been up since 6 o'clock at that desk all the way to 8 o'clock so that all the attendees can register and have all their questions answered and have an amazing experience. It's a lot of hard work. And I realized that at most of the community-run conferences, there's so much work to be done, and there are volunteers. And this is true. I actually reached out to most of the conferences that I've been to, from Berlin to States to India, and I asked most of the organizers, what is the one thing you could solve? What is the one thing that really takes up a lot of your time? And they said, during the conference, it's answering the attendee questions, answering their problems, or solving their issues. So I actually, one of the conferences, I stood there for an hour, just like writing down every single thing every attendee was asking, or what their issue was. And trying to figure out, like, what are the common questions all these attendees are asking when they go to a registration desk? And the top common questions were, like, what's the Wi-Fi password? Do you have, like, vegan food? Where's the restroom? Where's registration? Or is there free parking? And then I thought, with the whole world going on automation, there must be a way to automate this with a chatbot and, you know, make the conference organizer's life more simpler and easier. So I came up with a simple problem statement. How might we design a chatbot to reduce the workload on conference organizers? Simple. And I made a commitment. The next conference I attend, I have to build a chatbot for them. Simple. So the next conference I decided to attend is the Information Architecture Summit in Vancouver, Canada. And the one thing about me is that I strike random conversations with random people at random times. That's like my one-line bio. So I shot an email to the organizer for the conference, and I said, hey, Dave, I want to make a conference. I want to make a chatbot for the conference, and these are the things it can answer. Dave's like, I love the idea. Let's do this. Now, before this, I never built a chatbot ever in my life. So I thought, okay, well, let me just Google some trends on, like, what is a chatbot, you know, what it can do, and what are some of the cool examples. And I love this definition from Amir at Slack, where he says, bots are software-powered users. See the emphasis. He holds the bots at the same level as the other users in the channel. He holds them to the same standards. So after understanding the definition, I was looking for some example, and this is like a fiasco of the Microsoft Talkabot, where a bunch of hackers actually fed a bunch of garbage data to the chatbot, and obviously garbage in is garbage out. What I'm looking for in my search is something that's beautiful, something that delights me, brings a smile to my face when I look at a chatbot. And then I came across this chatbot called Poncho. It's based in New York. And I'm going to show you a video where whenever I talk with the chatbot, I started to troll it. I tried to break it. So with Poncho, I decided that I'm not going to ask it anything about the weather. Instead, I'm going to talk to it about love and see how it goes. It gives like a small description. How many of you guys have actually interacted with Poncho? Just raise your hands real quick. Okay, awesome. Go, people already have. And what's amazing is that they have an entire content team that writes new scripts, and they test it with the audience to kind of see which one sticks, which one does not. And then what's amazing is that, like, you know, I don't date Poncho, so I thought maybe he's going to be pissed off, but it's not, and actually wants to give me dating advice. Isn't this amazing? A weather bot that can actually talk to you about love, and even if you talk about Netflix, it's going to give you recommendations. This is phenomenal. I was so amazed that by this beautiful product that delighted me, that I actually reached out to the head of product at Poncho, Greg Lewich, and I asked him, what's the secret behind this? How are you doing this? And he said, RAN. I'm like, what do you mean by RAN? He said, random access navigation. This is a very important concept when it comes to building bots. Let's try to like understand this in an example. How many of you guys love coffee here? Coffee lovers, awesome. So imagine the conversation you have when you try to order coffee. Let's try to mimic that conversation in real life. So when I go to buy a coffee, I'm very specific about what I want. So I would start with like, hey, can I get a latte with soy milk and make it extra chocolatey? But see, we're human beings. We always change our minds. So I'm like, you know what? Make it with almond milk. And the barista gets it. Now, what if we try to make a chatbot that ordered coffee for you? How would that look like? There's a very high chance that this can turn into a disaster. Like, you start with like, hey, what kind of coffee do you want? Like, hey, I want a latte. And then you mention your milk. Now, the problem happens is with most chatbots, they're built in a linear way. It's like a tree structure. If this, then do this. If this, then do that. And then people are frustrated with that kind of experience. So what random access navigation advises us to do is basically let the user change their mind anytime in the flow. You don't force them to go through a specific navigation. That's the premise behind random access navigation. And that's why Poncho is so good. Because when you talk to it about Netflix, it talks about Netflix. You want to talk about love? It talks about love. And when you finally make up your mind to talk about the weather, it comes back to weather. Full circle. And then Greg said this amazing quote when I was talking to him. And he said that when you are building a chatbot, you must first understand the limitations of the user experience provided by that platform and then work off of that. So when I was designing the Slack experience for the IA Summit conference, I thought, okay, I'm going to use the inbuilt Slack bot that comes with every Slack channel, right? What is the limitation? So the limitation is pretty much this, like whatever you say, the keywords on the left, the right, the Slack bot is going to respond, pretty standard functionality. So I wanted to have the Wi-Fi question answered. So I just put in the word Wi-Fi. Now this turned out to be a disaster because every time somebody would just talk about, hey, the Wi-Fi is acting slow, or I don't like the Wi-Fi here, the Slack bot would come and interrupt the conversation you're having and just mention that. So I had to actually go in and make a small tweak. Instead of the word Wi-Fi, I put the trigger word as Wi-Fi password. This is when I came to a realization that as designers, we should always strive to push for minimal, delightful products or MVPs. This whole craze about MVPs, we should think about like, what is the minimum thing I can ship today that can bring a delight in my user's life? And then we asked attendees, like this is the first time you're using a Slack channel there and the Slack bot, and they loved it. Everybody loved it. And in less than 3 days, 8,000 messages were exchanged, and people used the Slack channel in unique ways, like to find out the person was sitting next to them who had no idea who they were. They used this for coordinating their lunch plans. And my best part was when the Slack bot answered frequently asked attendee questions, like what's the Wi-Fi password? So after this, I thought, what if I can build on top of this? What if I can somehow use AI and improve my Slack bot? So once again, I decided that the next conference I'm going to attend, I'm going to build a chatbot for them. The next conference for me was a big design conference. And the thing is, this conference has a very personal history with me, because 3 years ago, I was actually broke, and the only way I was getting through is I was making Indian food for a bunch of people and charging money for that. I really cook a really nice Indian food, by the way. And I wrote an email to the organizers that I don't have money to pay for the ticket, but if you can let me volunteer, I'd be more than happy to help out. And they said, absolutely. Now, I only had one requirement when I built this AI-powered Slack bot for the conference. I want it to be as smart as a puppy. Simple. I want this chatbot to be as smart as a puppy. This is a very important design principle. What does this mean? It means that we don't make things that are super smart, set high expectations so that when they fail, they actually leave the user with negative feelings or negative emotions. But like a puppy, we try to push the envelope, but in a graceful way, just like puppies. If a puppy fails, or like, so many videos on Instagram of puppies trying to climb upstairs and they fall down and everybody's laughing about them, sharing about them, because they do it in a graceful way, they're laughing about it. So I went out on a search, like let me find chatbot companies, they're doing something so amazing, but in a way that's actually bringing us delight. So the first company I came across is Kip. What they really nailed down is accessibility. You look at Kip's website, they're using a penguin. And why are they using a penguin? Here's what Rachel Law, the founder, has to say about it. Accessibility was their top priority when designing Kip, which is basically a bot for team shopping. They wanted an animal that is free from gender stereotypes or any kind of race stereotypes. And just like, look at it, like it's a penguin. Who on earth thinks penguins are racist? Nobody. Nobody thinks penguins are racist. The next chatbot I came across was Howdy. How many of you guys know about Howdy? Obviously, a lot of people know about Howdy. Okay. Howdy automates your stand-up meetings. And what I love about Howdy is that they've really nailed the entire introduction and the help part. As soon as the first conversation you have with Howdy, it doesn't try to be super smart, try to be human. It tells you straight up, I'm a bot. Your expectations from a design perspective are set. And then in the second line, right away, it describes what value it brings to you as a bot. It says, my main function is to help you communicate with and collect information from the members of the Slack team. Right away, you know it's a bot and what it's trying to do. And what's amazing about it is when you try to go for help, I love how beautifully designed this help is. It's probably one of the best help out there for a chatbot. It's beautifully color-coded, and each command has like a small description. And even if then you cannot get what you're looking for, they have like a link, click here to email the team for support. And I was so amazed that I reached out to the wonderful Ben Brown, and I asked him, like, how did they come up with this? And he said something so profound, and it's so simple, but it really hits the point that I want everybody in the room to repeat what's on the screen. Everybody. Let's start with me. Come on. You know, nobody really wants, come on, let's go. You know, nobody really wants to read a help system more than they need to get that thing done. An easy-to-use help system for Howdy was an early design consideration. We have also made our help actionable. From a design perspective, what I loved about this is that the way the Howdy team saw their chatbot was they wanted to work out of the box flawlessly. They don't want you to read manuals and guides and stuff. It should work out of the box. I love that. Another startup that's doing amazing stuff is called Growbot. So if you're using basically Slack or any kind of communication tool at your workplace, Growbot can basically monitor who's getting the most amount of kudos, and that person is going to be rockstar of the month. Simple. And an amazing functionality that they have is when you're talking with a Growbot chatbot and you type in the word operator, it switches to a live human being. So it will say like, hey, I'm Veronica, what's your question? And then you get your question answered, it goes back to a bot. And this is amazing. Think about it, you don't even have to leave the context. Because see, one of the biggest killers could be context switching. You're already focusing your Slack channel, you're already working on something, and now you have to leave that, go to a website, get your question answered, or call somebody and come back to it. I reached out to the CEO, Jeremy Vendy, and he told me like, it's so important to be as close to your users as possible when building your chatbot. And the best part is to give your users the ability to give feedback to the chatbot. So the next time you build a chatbot, think about ways you can provide the user an ability to give feedback right through your bot. So coming back to the Big Design bot, Big Design is fondly called as Big D in Dallas. And that's the first thing I decided that to avoid any kind of trolling, it's not going to be called the Big D bot. Absolutely not. It's going to be called the Big Design bot on purpose. So what I did was, using all these learnings that I was getting, I went around to the local meetups and I just asked people, like, guys, I'm building a chatbot. I'm going to do user research. What are the questions you guys want answered at the conference? And then I made a list. I made a list of all the questions, the wish list. And then every time I would program one feature, I would check it off. Another thing that I did is I created a mind map. This is really helpful when you're building a chatbot to like nail down your information architecture. So what I did was with the mind map is kind of like map all the intents, like all the questions my bot can answer. So this helps me understand what is the scope of my bot? What can it do? And I don't want to venture outside of it, in the first version at least. And basically what I did was I would have the question, that's the intent, what the user is going to say. So what are the different ways they can trigger this question, like where to eat in Addison? What's the action my bot is going to take? And then finally the response. What is my chatbot going to reply? So I sent an email to the organizers like, hey guys, the chatbot is ready. Here's a link to the demo and let me know if we can implement this. And it was a blast. We actually, I got the permission to launch it and deploy it at the Big Design Conference just last week. And it was amazing using the Slack channel. Like I said before, people were using it for communicating with each other. And this is the Big Design Conference bot. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a live demo of the machine learning that I infuse in this. Before that, just some stats. In 3 days, we had more than 3,000 messages exchanged. And this is probably an old screen, but based on the inbuilt analytics built into API.ai, which is what I used to build the chatbot, we're getting like 11 session queries per day. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my API.ai console. And is anybody here who speaks a language apart from English? Yes, which one? Okay, perfect. So what I want you to do is, obviously, like I want you to say hello in French, which is bonjour, right? Oui, okay, oui. So we're going to chat with the oui, and I haven't programmed this, so I guess you spell it O-U-I. Is that a, oh, oui, okay, oui. Okay. So it doesn't understand because this has not been programmed. But I have programmed the question for hello or welcome. So it knows what to say when you say the word hello or welcome or sup, but it doesn't know what to say when you're saying oi. So in API.ai, what I love about this, it has something called training. So every time anybody chats with the bot, you can kind of see what they're chatting with. And like here, we just use oi, and now it doesn't know what oi is. So I'm going to click to assign. And you can see that I can assign one of the intents I've already programmed. So I'm going to assign welcome to it. And then all you have to do is approve. And then we're going to wait for the agent training to complete. Okay, so agent training has started. Awesome. We need for it to complete. Okay, agent training completed. Awesome. And now I'm going to say the same word again. And hopefully you should recognize what I'm trying to say. All right, let me refresh it. It's always like tricky with like live demos. See, there you go. It gets it now. So what's amazing about this is that this year at the conference, we got so much data from all these users giving us different permutations and combinations on how they want to ask the chatbot different questions. So once we infuse a machine learning, we can make the bot smarter. So next year, it gets all these questions out of the box. So going back to this, from this entire journey, I realized that we don't need permission or expertise to give back to our community. We don't have to be an expert in any kind of skill or an art to give back to our community. So think about the next time you guys are going to go to any community. It could be your personal community, it could be to your conference, it could be a meetup, it could be anything. Think about how you can give back to your community. It could be something as small as volunteering for 1 hour. To you, it may be like, oh, I'm just volunteering for 1 hour. It's not a big deal. But that 1 hour is going to bring a huge smile to a small group of organizers. And I know for my part, I'm going to continue to build chatbots for conferences to reduce the workload on conference organizers. Thank you.